So in Vatican II in 1965, there was a document gravissimum, Educationis, and so what is that? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you give lectures on the whole, probably a few class periods dedicated to understanding it, but what might you say to maybe a Catholic parent or Catholic student who might be listening? Right? What does it mean? What does it teach, and why is it important?
I think it's a good summary of Catholic education, and it's not just dealing with Catholic schools. It also touches on Catholic universities, but then on education as a whole. So, to get one's bearings within the Catholic framework, I would recommend that document. It's relatively short. Like some of the documents, it's a little bit difficult to read. It's a little bit cumbersome. There's some long sentences and things. I think it's unnecessarily complicated in its syntax, but it's a good, solid document. And on that document, then, it was reflecting significantly on Divini Ilias, and it just sets a nice, good standard to begin the construction of an understanding of a Catholic philosophy of education. And then since that time, there have been, I don't know, I don't have the exact number, probably 20 or so documents that have been written on Catholic education. All of them will at some point go back and reflect on Gravissimum, because it's the I believe it's the only conciliar document about education. Although other documents touch on education, this one just talks specifically about it. And then from it have come a lot of other helpful documents. So one of the projects we worked on at Cardinal Newman, where I'm a senior fellow, is we promote and defend faithful Catholic education as our mission. But we wanted to make sure we understood what faithful Catholic education means. So we had to think, well, what is Catholic education supposed to be doing? And we shouldn't be doing what the Cardinal Newman Society wants, or what Benedictine College wants, or what we need to. What does the Church say? So several of us in the organization spent some time reviewing the documents, reading them, and really trying to distill what are those essential points. And other people, Archbishop Miller has done this as well, and he came up with his 5 models for Catholic education, I believe it's called, and he's over the target. We're reading the same documents, but they're pretty much 5 things that come up in Catholic education, and then the first of them is this idea that there's this divine mission for the school, that the reason we're doing it is for the good, the primary end of the student, which is salvation, and for the service of society, the common good. So it's salvation and service. That's why we open up the schools, right? The bishops don't say the SAT scores are low in the public schools. We've got to do something about these terrible test scores. There's something else going on. We're trying to do more, and we're trying to help that child towards his end of salvation, finding his purpose in this life and the next, so salvation and service. And then the other interesting thing in the documents is they're very focused on community. That caught me by surprise, is how important community is to these documents. And one of the things they mention is that the school is a type of ecclesial community. It's where the students encounter the experience of the church. So we have to do that. We have to do this experience carefully, so that as they're encountering the community of the school, they're encountering the community of the church. And the other interesting thing about that is that's a reason why we need faithful Catholic church teachers, because we're in communion with the church. If a teacher is not in communion with the church, we can't fulfill the mission of the school, which is to build a Christian Catholic community. And then, quickly, the others are obviously the one we all know is, we should be having, sacraments and prayer is something you would expect. And then the other is the idea of integral formation of the student, mind, body, and spirit, which we've been touching upon. And then the fifth thing, which is absolutely essential, is this presentation of a Catholic understanding of the world, of a Christian understanding of the world, which is what we kind of started the conversation with, right? There's so much more to the world than just than what the secular materialist world has to offer. It's an inaccurate view. So we want to offer that as well. So those are kind of the principles that we keep coming back on. So we touch these in the class. In my Foundations of Education class, I do this. We read some of the church documents, which then flesh this stuff out where you can see it come to life in the document.
Yeah, that's great. And it is helpful to kind of break it down in those 5 points.
Yeah.
Yeah,
where
you kind of begin with
right.
the divine mission, right? And then all the way down to that, Christian understanding of the world.
But this is
and
also
then,
where you pull in sports and dances, right?
Yeah.
Because that's part of integral formation, mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
So what you're doing with your body and what sports can do with the integration of the mind and the body, phenomenal. St. John Paul II wrote a lot about this. He says, that's such a unique place where we get access to the fullness of the human person and the human experience. And then you get all, of course, the spiritual stuff that comes up with learning defeat and then how to handle victory and then how to deal with jealousies and pride and everything else that comes up in sports. So again, sports has a really good place to play in Catholic education. But again, you've got to see it in this whole realm of, is it serving ultimately the salvation of the student and the common good?
Yeah, so maybe, what are some, you have students that are now in the program, in the graduate program. Obviously, we have undergraduates as well, and you have more students, and you're kind of been doing a lot of work promoting and developing this new graduate program, and it's an online program, correct?
Yes, but again, as we talked about, one of the critical things in Catholic education is community.
Yes.
So we determined that the best way to do it is not just to do it online. So we have two-week residencies. So we're just getting ready for them to come in, and they come over to my house for dinner. I cook them food. We laugh together. We talk together. We eat together. We have a couple dinners. I'll take them on a swamp walk here through Florida. We'll have sunset at the beach together, and then bond together as colleagues. And then we can spend the rest of the time online, and then they go back to their jobs and back to their homes, and then they go through the bulk of the program online. But our experience is that it's so hard after hard days of work to go back on the computer and read and write another paper. But if sister's waiting on the other end or Guernsey's on the other side, and these are my friends, and there's that accountability which then helps get through the drudgery and the difficulty of graduate education online. So that's an important part of our program. And then again, it's also about networking. So not just through the Cardinal Newman Society, but groups like the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education, the Chesterton Schools. It's important that these faithful Catholic entities get to know each other so we can cross-pollinate. And so that it's not just some abstract degree you learn online, but part of a broader movement, which is what Ave Maria is attempting to do as a university, to bring the thought of the church's thought into these various realms. So Ave Maria is bringing the church's thought on education to these schools.
Yeah, so, and it seems that there's a real just renaissance in Catholic education these days. I don't know, I mean, when we were in school, like in the 80s and this sort of thing, that it was not there were lots of Catholic schools, but it was not a heyday of richly Catholic schools really leaning into, the classical heritage or leaning into their Catholic identity. And now it seems like over the last 20 years, it seems like there's been exponential growth.
Most assuredly, yes. Yeah. A lot of that came out of the independent Catholic schools movement in the late 70s and early 80s. And then post-COVID, it's really taken off as the kind of the scales came off and people learned what was going on in schools. And there's DEI and CRT have pushed their way in, and people are it's clearer that there are ideological battles going on, and people are, I think, more in tune with what's happening with their children and looking for creative alternatives.